What's going on, everybody? You've got the card board coaches here with your boy, Coach Co. And we've actually got a special guest on here today. He is taking the place of the cartel. The cartel is going through birthday festivities. So if you get a chance, please wish him a happy birthday. He would love nothing more. But in his place today, we have Mr. Karlos, aka Sluggers55 on Instagram. If you're not already following him, you probably should be because of the crazy amount of cards that he posts on a regular basis. Karlos, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brendan. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. I think that you can provide a ton of background to the sports card space, whether we have old collectors that listen or new collectors that listen, just because you've been in the space for so damn long. And I don't mean to age you by saying that, but like you just
Yeah.
So just for reference, Karlos, how long have you been not only collecting, but because a lot of people say they've been collecting, their whole lives. But how long have you been, let's say, just attending sports card shows? We're going to narrow it down to that.
Wow. I'm going to say for the better part of 34 years, 33 years, maybe.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And
right around that period of time.
And so where does the card story start? Actually, first of all, let's give you the floor to kind of just, what you're all about. What do you specialize in? Go for it.
So, what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about how I got started.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the space that I'm in. So, how I got started, I would say the first cards I ever bought were 1977 Topps Star Wars.
Nice. Star
So
Wars.
Topps,
That's
the
unreal.
original Star Wars from 77. And then I bought them in the Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. But those were my very first cards I ever bought. So they were non-sports.
Yeah.
Transitioning, I should say, to sports was 79 80 Peachy. So that would have been the Gretzky rookie year. So the 79 80 Peachy would have been my very first buy for hockey cards. And then all through the 80s and then through the 90s. I've bought cards and of all different sports, especially basketball. So I've done all of that for the most part. Going into the 90s, I would say I took over a store by some luck and also a little bit of money. But I ended up taking over a store called Sluggers in 1990, 91. So that's been documented. And to make a long story short, I ended up trading French hockey that I bought 3 cases of for the store.
Really?
The store price was $30,000. Yeah. And I lucked into high French hockey, which I bought at I'll never forget, $750 a case. $750 per case, and they appreciated to over 10,000 a case. It was really crazy for the first year of 1991 Upper Deck hockey. They had the French variation, and essentially I traded those cases for the store.
And what's crazy, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's crazy about
not
that
at all.
is the cost of those cases these days is like not even close. It's not even close. So that's incredible, actually.
That's the time value of money. And but it was a lot of money even back then. $750 for a case of hockey cards was a lot of money back in 1990, 91. But I had a really good run at the store for 17 years. I've been doing Expo, the Toronto Card Expo, that's coming up this week, 20th to the 23rd. Since 91. I think maybe I've missed only a couple of shows in that 32 years, 32-year period. I've only missed maybe 2 or 3 shows at most. And then, my space, if we want to get into that part of it, I deal mostly in higher end singles. That's really my space. So if there are big cards that someone is looking for, normally I would stock them, or I find them for the various customers that are looking for them, whether they be a high end Jordan rookie, LeBron rookie, or Gretzky. It doesn't matter. I mean, it could be anybody: Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That's realistically my space, and I post a lot of stuff on Instagram. And my Instagram, as you mentioned earlier, is Slugger55. And I would say that I get a lot of different buys and high end cards, and I do post them on Instagram. Also, I do only a few trade shows a year,
Yeah.
namely being the Expo coming and the National. So only the biggest ones, whether they're in the United States or in Canada. I usually do those. So that's where I would say is my space. Basically, those bigger shows.
So I have so many questions, actually. The first one is going to be, what drove you in 79 to start collecting hockey cards? Or again, was it like, I know that there was a lot of hype about Gretzky for sure, but like, why 79 hockey? Like I mean, I know that you had just been in the hobby for about 2 years, and that's the collecting hobby in general, the collecting space. But what drew you to 79?
I'll tell you exactly what drew me to 79. It was that blue border. I just love the look of that 7980 O-Pee-Chee set. So that blue border was what really attracted, uh, you know, me buying those packs and opening them. I did know who Wayne Gretzky was at the time, but I think there were other players in there that were more notable. But most people did try to obviously get a Gretzky rookie at that time. And I didn't know much about Wayne Gretzky. I believe when he did come into the league, I was 10 years old. So I knew a little bit, but I didn't know enough to know that this guy would become, the greatest hockey player
Yeah,
in the history of the game.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't see who could have known that at 10 years old.
No, no, of
Right?
course not. Of course not. I mean, and even like we speculate now, and we'll get into this upcoming 2023-2024 Upper Deck Series 1 release where, some are
Yeah.
speculating that Connor Bedard is the next him. And I don't know if they're using Gretzky's name, but they're at the very least saying the next Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby, right? So there's always some
Right.
sort of speculation, almost like every decade, there's like a new person to speculate on, if you go back far enough. So it's impossible to have known that like Gretzky would have become what he was. But I just think it's very interesting. I mean, number one, that like you started collecting arguably one of the most iconic hockey sets of all time, and maybe potentially sports card sets of all time. And then not only that, but like you don't even really deal too much in hockey anymore. Like you have
No.
hockey cards for sure, but that's not like your first. That's like not your go-to at shows. Like I mean, I've seen you transact with people, and what you're looking for from people, and I mean, generally speaking, you're open to like looking at everything, but you're probably more likely to pass on a hockey card versus like a basketball or a football card. So I just think it's so interesting that your story starts with Star Wars and hockey cards, and it just kind of
Yeah.
transitions into basketball. I mean, predominantly. So that's really cool. I also think it's really cool that, I mean, two pivotal moments in your collecting journey, one being the first hockey card or the first cards you buy, and the other being, when you acquired the store. Both of them were, there was like a certain element of luck there, but that element of luck had completely
Yeah.
changed like your life essentially.
That acquisition of the store changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
100%. But I was happy to go there every day. It didn't feel like a job. It didn't feel like I was selling. I just enjoyed speaking to customers. I enjoyed, buying, selling, trading, a lot of different things. And I still to this day, I enjoy the sports very much so. You know, and the reason I would probably say that 10 years ago, I probably had majority of hockey, but I saw the trend, you know, when I started, you know, going back down again to the national, that, you know, it just seemed like everybody wanted, you know, baseball, football, basketball, even soccer more than hockey. So I transitioned out of hockey almost a decade ago. I still acquire big pieces once in a while, but generally, you're right. I pass on most hockey cards, to be honest with you. But because you're in Canada, hockey is very prevalent, and you usually have to carry some sort of inventory. However, I have seen a big change in the last 5 years where people are now asking me for Ronaldo and Messi and Jordan and LeBron and Kobe and Brady. And, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Whoever, you know, are the big names in their respective sports, right?
Yeah, and so when you say that people are asking, you mean like predominantly in Canada, like that's where the shift you've seen the most is.
Yes.
Yeah. So they've
Hmm.
gone from like predominantly hockey cards to like and we see this and I've seen this, you know, several times at the Expo actually. Like a lot of people think the Expo is like just a hockey like a show for hockey cards. And although I would say majority of the cards at the Expo are, I would say that there's still at least 35-40% of dealers running like football, basketball, baseball.
Yeah.
Like, do you know, like you definitely, if you come down here looking for any of those three, even soccer, there are some that like predominantly sell soccer. Where that probably wasn't too much of a thing, you know, 5 years ago. And so in saying that, I am curious to hear what you have to say about the transition over the last few years, not just from a like what people are looking for perspective, but like how have you seen the space transform? Let's say from like when you had the shop until now. Like, what are some of the biggest adjustments you've had to make?
My goodness,
You know,
technology.
yeah,
Technology. I mean, when I first had the store, there was barely any internet.
yeah,
Okay. I don't even think I had internet. There was no eBay, no social media. The only way that you could advertise, I remember specifically only no, maybe three forms of advertisement. There would be the Beckett magazine,
yeah.
where I would put a business card in. There would be Sports Collectors Digest, which I would put ads in, and the hockey news. That's primarily how I sold. You know, to advertise, and then people would call you from the U.S. or various parts of Canada. But that was it. I mean, there was really nothing else. I mean, and we're talking 30 years ago and change, right? So I would say that would be the biggest thing, technology. I mean, today everything is at your fingertips.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah,
I mean, we had to look at a Beckett magazine, you know, and that was, you know, the data was probably 2 months old. You know, everybody wanted to see the arrows up or the arrows down, right? That was what everybody wanted to see in the Beckett
yeah,
magazine.
yeah.
But now, you know, everybody's going to go on apps like Alt or, you know, eBay Sold, and um, there's various other apps that, you know, you can get what a card is worth in real time, right? Where you had to really look that up, and people are just way more educated today. You know, I mean, I see young kids that just know their stuff, and they can just pull up everything in you know, on their phone, which, you know, I can too as well. But, you know, I mean, the information is right there. I mean, with the emergence of things like Facebook and Instagram, obviously search engines like Google, you know, make it a lot easier to obtain, you know, information, and that's great. At least, you know, you get an idea of what it is you want to pay, and you know, you can kind of get a fair deal with regards to that, right?
I think as a result of that, it might, I mean, there's a reason why there's so much more volatility. You know, like with it's almost like with all that power and knowledge comes that volatility now, right? Because like just like you mentioned, I mean, but the Beckett magazine was what, monthly?
Monthly, yes.
Yeah, right. So like those prices were those prices for a month, basically. Like
Right,
you could
correct.
argue those prices as a dealer or as a buyer or a seller, right? Like this is the price in the Beckett magazine. Let's say they're still buying at 70% comps or 80% comps or whatever
Right,
the margin is, right? But those are the comps for the next month. So you know what you have for the next month. Whereas,
correct.
I mean, nowadays a card could drop 20, 30% by the end of the month, 40%, 50% by the
Yes.
end of the month, right? So um, you know, has that transition changed the manner in which you buy? So, you know,
Yes.
yeah, well, I assume so, right? Because like before, you kind of know at least what you have for a month. So you have a month to work with. Okay, who am I going to sell this to? Who do I know who wants a, I don't know, let's say an Eric Lindros rookie? You know, like who do I know that might want an Eric Lindros rookie? And you go through the list and you call the first person, second person, third person, messages. You know, like literally call because you can't really message them on anything. Send them a letter or something.
Right.
Knock on their door, say, "Hey, do you want to buy a Eric Lindros?" Um, whereas now it's like if you don't sell that thing before the player gets injured or you know something happens, I don't know, let's say outside of the space, and for whatever reason the card prices just start tanking, like you're stuck with that at the price that you bought it for, quite frankly, right? So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was just interesting for me to you know hear you know having to wait for that Beckett magazine and just kind of like put myself in that perspective and acknowledge that you know that definitely is one of the reasons why there's so much volatility in the space right now. Um, it's just pretty interesting actually.
The volatility has happened actually more so in the last 2 to 3 years, what I call the COVID bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, right at the beginning, things were probably where they were in 2019, and then as 2020 hit, things just started going crazy. With the golden auctions, with PWCC, with all the various auction houses, and I think that there were a lot of cards that were overinflated. I really do. And those same cards now have come back to reality. Some have even come to 2019 pricing,
Yep.
where before, they had gone up like 100, 200, 300%, So um, the COVID bubble is quite interesting. Before that, cards would generally, um, they would go up slowly
Yeah.
depending on the player and how they're playing
And
and
performance and
and
accolades.
championships
Yeah.
and scoring titles and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that would normally happen. And with COVID happening, when it did, there were a lot more people that were into it. A lot more people joined it, and I think that created false pricing, a lot of it. But I mean, the trading cards will be here, in my mind, or forever. And you just have to pay accordingly to what they're worth now. I mean, everybody is realistically about comps.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to pay within those comps, and I get that, and so do most people. And to come to a fair deal, that's what the information is for, right? Where the buyer and seller can, have a common ground and, hopefully come to a deal. But there are a lot of people that, maybe they're into a card for a lot more money and they don't want to take the loss, right? Because they're just not going for, or they're not trading for, what they were back in, 2021. I mean, the prices are crazy from 2021 to now, and the drops have been dramatic on certain players. You can. There's a number of there are a number of examples I could use right now,
Yeah.
but
I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find one that's
no,
gone up in the last
no,
from 20, let's say 2020 until now. You know, someone who was around in 2020 or a card that was around in 2020. And like I'm not talking like the ultra high end stuff that like let's say is like a pop 1 or pop 2 or pop 3 or whatever the case may be. That
right,
stuff if it hits the market, I mean, the last time it sold was like 8, 10, 12 years ago. So, I mean, naturally, the next time it sells is going to be ridiculously high. But on those cards that you see on a regular basis, they're pretty much kind of stabilized again, I think, anyway.
I agree with you. I mean, the ones that are extremely rare, like if we're talking high graded vintage,
Yeah.
okay, where the last sale might have been a decade ago
Yeah.
or more. I
Yeah.
mean, just take a 52 tops mantle rookie, for
Yeah.
example. What's a PSA 9 worth? At least
Yeah.
5 million,
Yeah.
maybe more. I don't know. The
Yeah.
next one could go for 10.
Well, because it
There's
comes
only
down to the
three
highest
PSA
bidder
10s in the
because
world.
there's just not that many.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I think there's 3 PSA 9s, right?
I'm not sure about the PSA 9s.
I think there's 3.
I know that there are 3 PSA 10s,
I think
and
they're
none have gone on the market for at least 15 or 20 years, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
So, when one of those goes on the market, well, I mean, what's a PSA 10 going to be worth? I
Yeah.
don't know, 30-40 million dollars. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, right? But those are rare extremes. I mean, if we're talking modern, that's where most of the volatility is,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Or all the volatility, if you
Yeah.
really want to
Yeah.
go there, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're talking, Prism or anything that's come out in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Things might have gone extremely high and they've dropped like, by more than half.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I would 100% agree with you. So let me ask you a question then. If someone is
Mhm.
looking to navigate the volatility or balance out their volatility, as someone who has gone through so many different ups and downs in this hobby, right? You went through that massive run up in the 90s where you literally sold or traded cases of,
Yeah.
Upper Deck French for a card shop. You know what I mean? So you saw that massive like uptick, and then what happened afterwards? Like we see the remnants today,
Right.
where they're still on shelves, and
Right.
people practically give them away for free. I mean, I think they're like $80 or $100 a box, if that.
There's a lot of junk wax from the 90s.
For
Lots.
sure. So
Yeah.
like having seen all that happen, what would you suggest people do to properly kind of mitigate risk?
First of all, I always say this: work within your budget.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if there's something you can afford and you feel it's a decent price and it's a fair price, go for it. But don't overextend yourself. Don't put out money you can't afford. I see this happen a lot. And somebody will, buy something that they couldn't afford, maybe. And then what happens is, they really scrape together a lot, or they go out and borrow and whatnot. And, by some by some fate, that card drops dramatically. And then they might be in a situation where they panic sell because they're like, oh my God, this is dropping, it's going to continue to drop, let me just sell and get out of it. And then they end up taking a big L, right? uh that's the thing. I always, when people come to me and ask me, what have you got, I kind of always ask them, and I do it, I do it out of respect, because I always believe people should work within their budget.
Yeah.
Buy what you can afford. And, if it does go down, for example, if it goes up, great. It's always great if it
Yeah, of
goes up.
course.
But if it goes down, you're not in a position where, you're forced to sell, right? You should be happy with what you bought, keep it for, possibly a long time. For some people, it's about collecting. Other people, there's collector versus investor, you know?
Yeah.
So, and there will always be that. There's always going to be people who, they'll buy Bowman First Chromes of guys that haven't even, come into Major League Baseball yet.
Yeah.
But they'll pay crazy amounts of money for prospects.
Yeah.
And then, assuming 2-3 years later goes by, some of them could have done really well, but I can guarantee you most have not. Most have not made the roster, and they paid for, very high draft picks that may or may not make the team. And then that's where, things happen like that where they paid a lot of money up front, where now, they're injured, or something bad has happened, like, Tatis Jr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like some scandals occurred, and all of a sudden, all these amazing cards you have of a top player have dropped significantly. But again, if you were in a position where you bought it and it dropped a little bit or a lot, then, and it doesn't affect you financially, uh, you know, eh, I would say, keep the card. If it's something that you need to sell, then I understand it. We all need to sell some stuff once in a while,
Yeah.
either to pay for other things or pay for debts. I mean, it happens. It
Yeah.
happens
Of
all the
course.
time.
Yeah.
How do you get collections unless, eventually people sell, right? So that's my biggest thing, I would say, would be, buy within your budget, buy within your means. Don't overspend if you can't.
I think that's great advice that everyone should take, and I know that especially in the last little bit, sports cards have been marketed as like an investment, as, as this sort of like hedge against inflation to a certain extent, as I'm more so like a store of value, right? Like all these things, and that's great, but if you overextend and it's a store of value and you need liquidity quickly, I mean, there goes your store of value, right? So
Yeah.
understanding that, and also what you're buying, right? Like, are you buying with the intention of this thing going up right now, or are you buying with this thing, or with the intention that this thing is going to go up in 5 or 10 or 15 years? And I think it's really important what you mentioned, where you buy things that you kind of intend to hold, right? Like if you
Right.
need to, right? So whereas a lot of people, I mean, I had a conversation with someone probably 2 or 3 days ago, and they asked me like, who am I buying ahead of the NBA playoffs? And I was like, I mean, I'm not buying to try to make money in the next week or
Right.
2 weeks or a month. You know what I mean? Because like realistically, 2 months, like how long is the playoffs? 2 months maximum? 3 months
Yeah.
maximum? Like, are you saying that like
Yeah, mid
my
June. I mean,
right?
usually if it goes all the way, it's about close to mid June, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're what, April, so like May, June. So
Yeah.
let's say 2 months. So I'm
2 months.
essentially hedging on like someone, the guy that I buy, not only performing well enough, but his cards also have to follow that same trajectory, and I have a 2 month window. I was like, man, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I guess it
Yeah.
just really brought perspective that like, I mean, there's a lot of people in this space that buy cards. I mean, essentially like on margin, like that
Yeah.
they're intending that certain things are going to happen in the next short amount of time that they can squeeze enough out of this that they can turn a profit and then roll that over into something else. And I mean, it's just a kind of dangerous game.
I will always say this, and I hope all your listeners listen to this statement. Money can always buy cards. Cards can't necessarily buy you money.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really important. Okay. Um, you know, investors and collectors, there's always going to be that mix. And, I always say buy what you like, buy who you like. If you like Connor Bedard coming up, buy him. A lot of people will be. But
But
if
how much
if
can
this
you
is your
like a
guy,
guy?
you
How
know,
much can you like a guy who, if you've only seen him play OHL and junior hockey, and how much of you liking him has to do with everybody else kind of like reaffirming that he's the best and he's the next one. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of like where I'm at, where I'm like, okay, you might like him, but like, how much do you like him? Like, do you like him enough that
right,
if he broke his leg, that you'd still support him? You know what I mean? Is he still going to be if he doesn't win the Calder, if he starts off to like has a terrible start to the season, like, do you still like him? Because this is a very small sample size for you to say like I like this kid, I really like this kid. I wonder how much of, when people say that I like him or I'm backing him or that's my guy or whatever the case may be, how much of that has to do with the fact that, we mentioned social media in the past, how much of that has to do with social media? And, every time you turn on the TV for the last 3 months on a Canadian sports network and they're doing highlights, there's like literally a Bedard watch, not only of his highlights like in the OHL, but of which team is going to be crappy enough to get the opportunity to draft him. Do you know what I mean? Like, how much of all of this is just marketing?
I think very little to do with marketing. I'm
Okay,
going to tell you why.
go for it.
People always want a shot at the next Connor McDavid or the next Gretzky. They
Yeah,
always want that shot. And people will give Connor Bedard every opportunity to present himself or prove himself rather,
yeah.
right? I believe that collectors will buy him simply because he's the next. I mean, if you look at McDavid actually, okay, and I remember this when the Young Guns of McDavid came out, okay, they were about $200, okay? And the reason why they weren't more money is if you remember, just before Upper Deck Hockey came out in 2015, McDavid was injured. He
That's what he
broke his
broke his he broke
collarbone.
his yeah. That's why I said if he breaks his leg, right? Because like he
Yeah.
didn't even get a real shot at the Calder. He literally got injured in his
No,
rookie
no,
year.
no, he didn't. He
Yeah.
didn't even, I don't think he qualified for it. I
No,
think
he played like 40
Panarin won
games, I
it
think,
that
or
year.
30. He played 30 games or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
But had he played the entire season, he definitely would have run away with it. There's
Yeah.
no doubt in my mind. But you can see that people gave him that opportunity. And now he's the best player in the world by far. Not by a little bit, by far. And people want, they think that Connor Bedard is the next one. I mean, there's always going to be people that want the next one. And
I just
for
remember when there was Alexis
hockey collectors,
Lafreniere. You remember like the
yes.
Alexis Lafreniere hype? Like everyone was saying that this kid was going to be like he was set up so perfectly in New York. And New York won the lottery. They weren't supposed to win the lottery. New York already had a decent team, a decent foundation. They just drafted Capo Caco the year before, second overall.
Yeah.
And everyone was banking on Lafreniere is going to tear it up on Broadway. And I remember seeing his Young Gun selling for like $500 Canadian raw when they first came out.
Yep.
And I was
Yeah,
like,
they did.
who the hell is this kid? What has he done? You know, like, how are we giving this kid the crown already? And he could very well become a pretty good hockey player. But as of right now, I mean, he's like a third or fourth liner on that team. Like, he has certainly not lived up to the hype. He's not produced anything remotely close to a $500 card. And I'm not
No.
saying that Connor Bedard's not going to be or is going to be like Alexis Lafreniere, but you know, we always so quick to crown these kids, right? Like
I know.
And again, like that's why I mentioned, like I don't know how much of that has to do with marketing.
It's going to be based on potential, right? That's really what it comes down to. I mean, the whole thing is, you know, even if Connor Bedard does half of his production that he's done in the 08, is it the OHL?
Yeah.
Or it's the Western Hockey
He plays
League.
for the Regina Pats. So yes,
Regina
the West,
Pats.
yeah, Western Hockey League.
So the Western Hockey League. You know, that would be a win in the NHL. The problem is most people cannot duplicate anywhere close to the stats that they did in junior.
Yeah.
You know, McDavid might be right there. I mean, with 152 or 153 points, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I never thought I'd see anybody hit that mark, right? So, you know, will Bedard be the next Connor McDavid? I don't know. Time will tell. But there are going to be a lot of collectors, a lot of fans who will jump on board and buy, you know, his cards, whether they're the Young Guns, SP Authentic, you know, the Cup, you know, and any of the other products in between, right?
Yeah.
So they will, you know, they're going to jump on board. There's no doubt about it because generational talent, people just don't want to miss that. People don't want to say they missed Connor McDavid or the next Connor McDavid or the next Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux, whoever you want to put in there, right?
Yeah.
You know, so you can bet next year's hockey is going to be a juggernaut. Absolutely.
I mean, he's kind of set up perfectly. Like, I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I mean, we can clearly see the amount of players that scored 100 points this year, the amount of players that scored 40 goals this year. I mean, like they're not exactly the big names. Like we're talking like Carter Verhaeghe, like McCann. We're talking about not exactly household names scoring. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, I think he put up 100 points if I'm not mistaken, or close to
Yeah.
that, right? So I think it's interesting. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've had 2 expansion teams in the last 10 years. And every time you bring in an expansion team, you're essentially adding the equivalent of like a new roster into the league of players who otherwise would not have cracked the NHL, right? So you have people that would not have been playing in the NHL last year or 2 years ago if the Kraken didn't exist, right? Because essentially they need to have 20 more players or 30 more players or however many on a roster. And so inevitably, I mean, the quality kind of decreases a little bit. And so I think that has to do with that's kind of where that increased scoring output comes from to a certain extent, or at least a factor in it. And so, like I previously mentioned, now you have Connor Bedard stepping into that like increased scoring. Because I remember not very long ago, Jamie Benn led the NHL in scoring with like 90 points or something, or like 97 points.
Yes, I remember that year.
Right? Like
Mhm.
it was like I was like, how has no one cracked 100 points this year? And I think it might have been as early as like 5 or 6 years ago. So not very long ago at all. Taylor Hall when he
Yeah, it
won
wasn't that
MVP.
long ago, but I do remember that he did win this. Yeah, he did win the scoring title.
Taylor Hall won MVP with something similar as well, right? Like I don't think he cracked 100
Yes.
points.
No.
And that was I think it was like 2018. So, we've definitely seen that uptick in scoring. I think that's a perfect storm for, a guy who's supposed to come in and dominate. Let's talk a little bit about how much do you think his young gun is going to debut for? Knowing what we know now, knowing what you've seen happen in the past, knowing kind of where the market is, and maybe any other tidbits you want to share.
At a minimum?
Yeah.
At a minimum?
Yeah.
500.
Yeah.
At a minimum. Yeah. I mean, if McDavid was 200, 250, and he was injured.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's almost, yeah. So 2015,
Yeah.
you're looking 8 years ago.
8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if we're on a similar comparison,
Yeah.
okay, I would say 500 out of the gate. That's what I would say. And, if we're talking young guns, we're talking the exclusives, we're talking high gloss. I mean, those are just going to go for, crazy amounts of money too. Right. And there will be buyers. I don't foresee less than $500. I could be wrong. I mean, it could be more than that, or it could be slightly less, but I think the median would be $500 right off the like out of the gate. Because I think that hobby boxes, because from what I understand, there's no Connor Bedard is not going to be in Series 1. I'm told he's going to be in Series 2.
Really?
So far.
Hold up.
How
did you know that? Is that
a number of people have called me because I was looking to buy a number of cases, right? Going in for next season. And everyone that I've spoken to so far has told me that he will be in Series 2, not in Series 1. Whether or not that makes a huge deal or not, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously Series 1 or Series 2 is going to outsell one, like it's going to sell their opposite, right?
I mean, if you pre-ordered, you're kind of screwed now though.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, because
Yes.
I know people that were like talking about ordering cases, like everyday people. And so if they pulled the trigger and they've already, because they were worried that they might, I don't know, essentially not get their case or whatever the case may be, pun intended. Like the fact that he's debuting in Series 2, I think is pretty interesting. Especially
that's what I'm told.
It's going to give him time to play in the NHL. Like, I mean, there's going to be like, he's going to have, I mean, think about it. Series 2 right now is releasing playoff time. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, he will have a full season under his belt by the time Series 2 comes out.
Yeah. But also Series 2 had the first overall Canadian pick as well.
Yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Slugger55 wasn't in Series 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know what? In all honesty, I haven't seen any confirmation from Upper Deck, but from the people that I buy cases from and that I buy these products from, this is what they've told me, and they're pretty good. So if he is in Series 2, we're not going to see his young guns maybe a year from now.
Like, you hear that, people? You have plenty of time to stock up. You have plenty of time to stack your cash if you want to go off on Connor Bedard. You have a whole year to prepare.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm told series two. I listen. I myself I'm on the Connor Bedard wagon.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've seen him play. I've watched him play in the WHL. I've watched him. His junior was just amazing. I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody do, in all honesty, with
Yeah.
the exception of Peter Forsberg, right?
Yeah. I mean,
But
Jordan Eberle was
uh,
dominant on the World Junior stage as well.
yeah, he
You know?
was.
Yeah.
He was. I mean, Connor Bedard would have the record if Forsberg hadn't played Japan and got 10 points in one game,
Yeah.
right? That's the
Yeah.
reality,
Yeah.
So I feel like he played against amazing competition. He scored crucial goals. He's right up there with any of the greats that have ever played junior. I mean, how could you discount him against guys like a McDavid or a Crosby, which they don't even have anywhere close to those numbers for
Yeah.
junior, for
Yeah.
for a junior championship rather, right?
Yeah.
World Juniors. So you have to give this guy some prop. I mean, he's got to be able to duplicate some of that success in the NHL. I mean, could this guy be the next, out of the gate, 50 goal scorer? I don't give him 60, but maybe 40. It's possible. I don't know. It depends how much ice time he gets. It depends on a lot of factors. Depends who he's drafted to too.
Yeah. No,
Right?
I agree.
Everybody is on pins and needles.
Yeah.
Who's going to get the first overall pick?
Yeah.
And right now, the Ducks have
Highest probability.
the highest percentage,
Yeah.
25 point something
Yeah.
percent. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the only downfall in this is that all the people chasing Connor Bedard won't be chasing anyone else.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's going to be a hit on a lot of the other players because hockey is very top heavy. Okay, so you've got McDavid, which everybody wants, Ovi, Gretzky. You've got
Crosby.
Crosby, Matthews. I mean, realistically, that's what most people are chasing. Okay, and for good reason. They're the best players, right? But when was the last time somebody asked you for Bo Horvat or even David Pasternak?
Yeah.
Okay, like David Pasternak should be right in there.
I agree. I mean,
And
there's some
I don't get
diehard
anybody
Boston
asking for
fans.
Pasternak,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, so next year is going to be even worse. And I say that because 90% of the people, their funds, their money is going to be going to chase Connor Bedard, leaving no money or very little money for other players. And it could be within hockey, it could be out of hockey, it doesn't matter. But you're going to get a large percentage that will be chasing Bedard and Bedard only and putting that money towards Bedard. So it leaves very little room. Like, think about it. You have a paycheck and it's $100 and you're spending 90 towards it. That's the reality,
I
right?
think that's
So
why
yeah.
I think that's why I can't imagine it being $500. I think it's got to be more. Like the amount of people that I think are going to just like empty. Like there's people waiting. Like I said, there's people waiting for this guy to debut. There's people who are already selling stuff, are trying to create liquidity. There are people
Right.
who like are moving out of things that that might already have been up, or they're cutting their losses on things, and they're just stacking. And not only that, but I think that the Connor Bedard watch might actually extend past the hockey space. And so you might actually see, especially with the introduction of these one of ones, the one of one young guns,
Yeah.
that chase alone might start to pull people in who chase high end basketball, football, and baseball.
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah.
I mean, because this is the first time where they have like a specific thing that they're chasing, right? Like these collectors, they want, like when they're talking ultra high end stuff, they don't really know too much about the high gloss, but they know Connor Bedard. I mean, they don't know him just yet, but they might have already heard some of the chatter about Connor Bedard. And now all of a sudden there's one of ones that you can hit. I mean, that's probably going to be a 6-figure card before he ever steps on the ice. I mean, that'll never happen before he steps on the ice, but you know what I mean? Like a one of one Connor Bedard.
I agree with you. And here's the thing too. The hobby boxes will probably be out of the gate 200 between $200 and $300.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
100%. I agree with you there. The hobby boxes will be at least $200 to $300. Okay. Probably the most that they've ever been, So, but here's the other thing, which I want to give some advice to collectors. I don't think that they necessarily have to just chase him out of the gate. Understand something. If you're only going for the young gun and not the exclusives and not the high gloss, there's going to be a ton of retail released. There's going to be a ton of tins released. There's going to be a ton of the Walmart stuff released. Okay. So there's going to be, if anybody is under the impression that Upper Deck is somehow going to not run the presses, okay, they're sadly mistaken. Okay. Now, hobby is always limited, always will be the best stuff. Okay. However, the retail and everything else that comes out, you're going to see a lot. There will be a lot of Bedard rookies on the market. However, with more supply, I wouldn't just rush to go pay the 500 or 6, whatever it's going for.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would wait until the market settles, right?
Yeah.
If you want to be one of the first people to get it because you want to be that person and say, I got one, great. Okay, fine. But the reality is there will be a lot on the market. There will be no shortage of Connor Bedard Young Guns. You can't say the same for SP Authentic or the Cup.
I
That's a
agree.
different story.
Yeah.
That's completely different level. Okay. But Young Guns, I've always found this from history. The Young Guns are the most expensive when they first are released, like
Yeah.
at an expo.
Yep.
Let's coordinate that. They're the most expensive. They're usually very many are not. They never go for more than that at that point in time.
At the
Okay,
initial release. Yeah, I agree.
at the initial release, most of the time that drops. Will Connor Bedard beat beat that? I don't know. But I do recommend for collectors to be patient. Okay. Don't go pay crazy, stupid money right off the bat. Okay. If you want to wait because there will be more supply coming out and you will pay less money, that's what I would suggest to the collectors, especially the ones that want to throw, I don't want to say, throw, but, want to put out,
Yeah.
$500 plus dollars, right?
Yeah.
That would be my suggestion to the collectors, right? And what's also made it very valuable, people will put bounties on these one of ones.
Yes, 100%.
There are big bounties in the other sports.
Yep.
And some of those boxes go for a lot, and they're highly sought after because you've got guys like Shine and other people in the industry saying, we're gonna pay this much money for the one of one if you pull it, right?
Yeah. Well, even
and
was it David Adams Card World did a $250,000 bounty for all the super short printed, like from the top series 1 release, right? So like there, like
yes,
we've come to accept that like every set, like a big set anyway, has like some sort of bounty. So I agree 100% that there's definitely gonna be a bounty on the Bedard one of one.
100%. There's going to be a bounty on the one of one, and that's going to drive interest. And the only place you can get it is hobby. You're not going to be able to find it in retail.
Yep.
So, but if you want a plain young gun, people are going to buy up the retail. You're going to see, they're going to buy it up. And, at a chance to get one, that's what I would say for the collectors. If they want a cheap way out, retail is the best way, or the tins or the fat packs and
blasters,
all the variations.
Yeah.
Blasters, all that stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned the expo. I want to transition into that briefly. So we've got the expo coming up as we discussed. It's coming up at the end of the week, actually. So from April 20th to the 23rd, you are set up. You have a booth for the first time, correct?
Well, no, I've had a booth there, but I have 2 booths actually.
2 booths is what you mentioned. My apologies. 2 booths. Yeah.
This is the second time I've had the 2 booths, but I normally had 1, but my inventory grew, and I had to transition into 2 booths. Like from now on, I could probably do 3 in all honesty, but I have to be able to fit it into 2, right? And I have 1 booth that's strictly high end. And then as you go down into the next one, it's more lower end, medium range. I want to try at Expo to see all the customers, not just the ones that can afford uber high end cards, right? So I have a lot of medium to low end stuff that I have bought or I've traded for because that's the space that more or less sells. I mean, really, the sweet spot for me is cards that are $200 to $2,000. Okay. As soon as you get above that, um, it's a more difficult sell.
That's
At
actually
least
what I
here
was
in
going to ask.
Canada.
That's actually what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, what the game plan is going into the expo, and how does, like, what markets you find have been, kind of the most liquid. And you're saying,
Um,
like, from the 200 to 2000 is like
yeah,
yeah?
if we're talking price point, yes. Okay. Absolutely. Because that is what most people can afford. Okay. If we're talking and I want to try to carry everything in all sports. So
Yeah.
if you're coming to my table, you're not going to see just like some nice hockey, although I don't have a ton of nice hockey anymore,
Yeah.
but you will see all the sports, all the goats, all the players from every sport. And that's what I want people to come and see me. I want them to come, you want Mahomes? Come and see me. You want Brady? Come and see me. You want Jordan, LeBron, Kobe? Come and see me. You want Messi, Ronaldo? Come and see me. Right? But can I be honest? If you want vintage hockey, I'm not the person to see, right? Or even some modern day stuff. I have a few, really good ones, but generally there are a lot of other people that are in Expo that people would go to before me in hockey cards, right? So, but I try to keep my price point at a level where it's affordable for people, because I know also that it becomes a harder sell if we're talking 2000, like as soon if you start getting to the 5,000 or $10,000
Yeah.
cards, which I have a number of, um very few people can buy those cards. Like your customer base is extremely slim, right? And I compare it to a McDavid, for example, and this is the analogy. Okay, if you take 10 people that and you have a Connor McDavid young gun, there's a high probability that every person in that group of 10 can afford a young gun, right? But now let's change that to the cup.
Yeah, or even
Now,
a future watch auto, right?
or even
Future
a future
watch.
watch.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
going to say, even
Yeah.
even a future watch,
Yeah.
your customer base will drop by 80% at a minimum, right? Maybe 90. There might be one, I would say one at least, but maybe 2 people that can afford that.
Yeah.
So that's where young guns, for example, a McDavid has more liquidity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of price point.
For sure.
It's not easy to sell an SPA future watch
Yeah.
auto or a cup rookie. It
Yeah.
just is not, right? I've had them, and trust me, they're not an easy sell. They really are not. A lot of people want them, but very few people can actually buy them,
Well, especially
right?
full cash deal too, right? Like
Full
that's
cash.
yeah.
I,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Full cash,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
If there's some trade involved,
Yeah.
usually you can get there. I'm
Yeah.
going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You can get there,
Yeah.
right? But if it's full cash, it makes it for a more difficult sale,
For
right?
sure. Let me ask you, how does the spring expo differ from the fall expo? So the one that we had in November. How does over the years how have they differed for you?
I would say the November Expo is usually my better of the two.
Okay.
And the reason being is because hockey has just started.
Yeah.
And basketball,
Yeah.
actually. Okay.
Yeah.
So the seasons of those two particular sports And then football is on. I mean, we're going to be a couple months into the season of football.
Yep.
Baseball is ended at that point.
Yep.
So, but you've got about 3 of the 4 major sports starting, okay? And people are into it, when it's the whole thing out of sight, out of mind. When things are in sight, then, people are like, yeah, I want to come out there. I want to buy, the new rookies and in these sports and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely more. And then obviously Upper Deck Hockey Series 1 is a key release at Expo, so that tends to drive a lot more people to the show,
Yeah.
right? And their promotions. The spring is a little different because we're into playoffs. Football is ended. You sell a lot of baseball, but it generally doesn't have the same flair as the fall expo. I find my sales are, I don't want to say 50%, but I'd say 75% of the fall expo, right?
Really?
It just People just look forward to going to the fall expo more, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, on the subject of the Fall Expo, or not the Fall Expo, but on the subject of the Expo in general, you will be set up. You have some important things to talk about your setup. So you wanted to mention some interesting things that'll be going on in your booth, as well as telling everyone how they can find you, how they can reach out if they potentially want to buy or sell. Go for it.
So I will be set up at booth 522 and 523. We are doing hourly draws, and specifically on Instagram for cards, but specific cards on the hour. We will be giving out Pokemon packs to kids that are 12 and under, and some Upper Deck Hockey Series 2 to kids that are 12 and under. The draws, all you have to do is follow me on Instagram, Slugger55. If you follow me on Instagram or you show that you're currently following, we're going to give you a ticket. We obviously try to get new followers. So we'll have draws for new followers and current followers. We will also have a big draw, a main draw, which will take place on Monday. The Monday, I believe it's the 24th on Instagram Live. And we will be drawn for a Boba Purple Refractor PSA 9. So generally, if you come over to the booth, we'll be giving out lots of freebies to kids, and we would love to enter your name into our Instagram as a follower, and love for you to win some cards. That's really it. I've been looking to grow my Instagram a lot more, and by doing giveaways and things of this nature, I've grown it to a very comfortable level. But it can always get higher, right? I
Yeah.
just hit my 5,000
Congrats.
follower mark, which I was really happy about. But my goal by the end of the year is to have 10,000 followers, if I can get there. And with the help of this show or these platforms and this medium, I definitely want to get there. As for buying and selling, if you've got, I would say more non-hockey, come and see me. Okay. I do trades, I do buys. People ask me, what do I pay as a percentage? There are some things I'll pay really high for, and some things I will not. I mean, usually I will pay 70 to 90% of comps, depending on what it is. If it's something that I can't live without, I'll pay higher, right? That's the reality of it. So a lot of people always ask me, okay, what are you paying? And that question that question vary. It's variable. But I try to be as fair as possible, and I always say this to people that if you come and look in my showcase and you see the type of stuff I carry, I pay very well. You cannot get the kind of stuff that I have in my showcase by paying nothing. So I pay very fair, I pay very well, and I trade very fairly depending on what it is you have and what it is you want. That's basically it.
Awesome.
And I will say again, Slugger55 if you don't already follow me. And you come over to the booth, grab a ticket, show me that you're following, and you'll have a great experience.
There you go, everybody. So if you get a chance to hit up the Sports Card Expo, perhaps you head over onto Mr. Karlos's booth and check out Sluggers55, and hopefully you can help share some more knowledge and shoot the shit a little bit. Team, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cardboard Coaches. For now, we are out of here. Peace.